go.
Let's call the meeting to order, please. Take your seats. We're going to begin. It's now 6:05. I'm calling the meeting to order, March 30th, 2022. And we will begin with establishment of a quorum.
Mr. Wathers?
I am here.
Ms. Kirkner?
Here.
Mr. Lester?
Here.
Mr. Hawk?
Here.
Mr. Kane?
Here.
Commissioner Wance?
Here.
Secretary Eisenberg?
Here.
Mr. Chair, please let the record reflect that 6 members are present and we do have a quorum.
Very good. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. The next item on our agenda is review and approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda this evening?
The only revision was the entrance policy for this evening, and so that's it, nothing of substance.
Very good. Then I would be happy to entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Good. Madam Secretary, I turn it over to you for the administrative report.
Absolutely. So just a couple of orders for this evening of business. Anyone who's wishing to speak and give comment, please sign up in the back of the room, or else your name will not be called. We're going to try to do this in an orderly fashion. Each speaker has 3 minutes to give their presentation of the comments they'd like to give to the Planning Commission this evening. Any additional comments, if you would like, please email them to the Planning Commission. It's on our website. I believe it's plancom.gov.
No, plancom@carrollcountymd.com.
Okay, we will also post that up here, but that way they go directly to our Planning Commission members. It's not filtered through staff, so if there's anything additional you'd like to add that you did not get to say during your time this evening, please email them into our Planning Commission. If you can turn off all your cell phones and keep chatter to a minimum in the back so that way we can hear the speaker presentations. Laura Mattias from Development Review will be giving her presentation, followed by Mr. Pilon, who represents St. John's Property, and we'll also go over the plan with you as well. So I just wanted to go over those kind of bits of order, and Laura will be keeping the time.
Very good. Anything else?
Nope, that's all I have this evening.
Very good. Then we'll turn it over to item 6, which is the special report.
Excuse me.
I was looking at the number of chairs if we needed. I almost said good morning. It's not. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
Do you want to wait a second or ask people to, so they can all hear?
No, that's a good idea. Why don't we have everyone who's standing in the back, if you could take a seat, or at least if you have something to talk about, step outside so that we can make sure everybody can hear what's going on.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're good to go. Guys.
All right. Again, good evening. I'm Laura Mattias with the Bureau of Development Review. And Development Review, we're here tonight with a special report for you. As you will note, there is no county file number up top, is usually on this report that you have, is where we put that. So this is just the Beatty property, and that has good reason. So the project is not yet in a technical review process with the county. This is a pre-request per the developer in their efforts to engage the community, engage the Planning Commission to bring their overall master plan for this Beatty property to a public meeting tonight, okay? So what I would like to do is actually invite Mr. Pilon up. Anybody that you would like to bring with you? Thank you. So just to introduce yourself and say hello, and then I will give you some context for the property itself, where we are in Carroll County, what's around there, and then I will hand it over to Mr. Pilon, who has his own presentation regarding their vision for developing the property.
Very good. Good evening.
Evening, thank you. My name is Tom Pilon. I'm Executive Vice President of Development for St. John Properties, which means that I get building permits for a living. Or I at least endeavor to get building permits for a living. I have Matt Taylor with me this evening, who's our development manager, and he will be the lead development manager for the project when we get to the point of working through the technical design and review of the project itself. So thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. It was explained to me that our request was a little unusual to be here this early, but we are in a due diligence period as we're under contract to purchase the property. We do not presently own it. So we wanted to see what kind of feedback we could get and share, kind of as Laura mentioned, just kind of the vision for the project in general and give you some pieces to it. But I won't get ahead of myself.
Well, I think we found that open communication as early as possible tends to be a good thing.
Sure.
So we appreciate you being here, and so welcome.
Great. Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Yep, good evening. As Tom said, Matt Taylor, St. John Properties, Development Manager. I work on Tom's team, and as he said, I will be leading this project as we move forward on a day-to-day basis with the goal of getting building permits. And I'd like, as you guys mentioned, the open communication to start it early, so feel free to reach out myself or Tom as we move forward. And we're happy to help.
Very good. Well, thanks for being here.
Thank you. All right. So as stated, I am going to simply give you a context for where this is happening and what's in the area. There's probably not a single person in this room who doesn't know, like, could just take a map of Carroll County and pretty much point to the Beatty property. That is probably due to the fact that well, a lot of things. It's been in the public eye lately for the rezoning, which you're familiar with. But also, it's one of the largest properties left in the Freedom area that has not yet been developed. So it's definitely high profile, I would say. The property itself is just about 121 acres all combined, okay? So location-wise, right, we are north of Route 26, south of Bennett Road, east of Route 32, and west of Oklahoma Road. So that's kind of the rectangular box that we're in here. That 121 acres is comprised of multiple parcels. It does have 3 zoning districts across the entirety of the 121 acres. So I'm sure you'll remember this. So along Bennett Road, we have a swath of R40,000 residential, okay? And then off of Progress Way, we have an I-1 industrial district, and then the rest is R20, which is residential 20,000, okay? A little bit closer in, we can see where we are. Just more context to the north. Across Bennett Road, we have in 1994 subdivision, Quincy Station. This is all R40,000, so it matches then what is on the Beatty property, the R40,000 along Bennett. To the northeast is Wilson Farms. Some of you might remember or have been involved with Wilson Farms subdivision approval. That was back in 2015. The Planning Commission approved that subdivision. So this is the triangular lot here. Also R20, which then matches across to the Beatty property. That is a cluster subdivision. You can tell that by the lot sizes and the larger open space parcels here, okay? To the south, we have a much older subdivision, 1961. This is Long Meadow subdivision. and that's in the R20,000 zoning district also. Okay, along Progress Way, probably many of you have driven back here, hopefully. So along Progress Way, we have single-tenant, multi-tenant buildings in the I-1 district, and to the west along London Town Boulevard, so here's Georgetown coming up and London Town in this direction, commercial and retail businesses that are I-1 and C3 zoning districts, okay? So that's the general area context. The property itself does have a stream that bisects it. You'll see that loud and clear on here, along with forested buffer along that stream right now. The 2018 Freedom Community Comprehensive Plan. So we are, this is a good snapshot of the red and white dashed lines are the planned major streets that are in that plan, that 2018 plan. And you'll see these you're all familiar with. They've all touched some project recently that you are all aware of. The extension of Dickinson Road paralleling 26, the extension of Monroe through the Hobie Wolf property, and the extension of Georgetown from that, I'm gonna call it a 90-degree turn here, London Town and Georgetown up to connect to Progress Way. Okay. The yellow lines you'll see on here, just for, again, full context, these are pedestrian walkways that are in existence. So that adds a little bit of interest to, Wilson Farms does have sidewalk as well as sidewalk along Bennett Road. Again, some of you up here may remember approving that plan. This also shows the traffic signals in the area. Okay. And along 26. So going a bit deeper into context, as you all are aware, we saw recently the Hobie Wolf property for 103 lots, residential lots. That is a plan that is in process right now with the technical review process. A couple schools in the area, Oklahoma Middle and Liberty High School, very near. And then we've gone ahead and just identified along this corridor, London Town and Georgetown, there are quite a number. This again is industrial and commercially zoned here, and you'll see that by the different colors, and just identified some of the existing uses. Not all of them by far, but it's, again, some context if you're going from point A to point B, who is going where, right? Connectivity. So we are in the existing water and sewer service areas for this property, so it will all be connected to the public infrastructure. And then to zoom in, we do have that I-1 zoned area of the Beatty property off of Progress Way. We simply pulled into this slide directly from the code what our the principal permitted uses in the I-1 and conditional uses. And it was just a snapshot of what may potentially go there, right? We don't know. They probably don't even know. And then some just images along the Bennett Road. So this is at 32 in Bennett. And you'll see on the right-hand side, on the south side, where we have industrial, on the other side of this, we have a berm and landscaping. And as we move along the road, you can see that berm and landscaping continue all the way through there as we approach the Beatty property. And then we open up where we have the residences across the street, the R40 zoning on the left-hand side in this. So we're heading east, okay? And on the right would be the Beatty property. Now we're approaching, this is at Wilson Farms where the sidewalk is and the cluster subdivision there. Then we get further down the road to Oak Creek subdivision, which is a little bit older. This is where you'll find the backyards face Bennett Road, and then the fencing, people put up fencing as they desired. And then we're heading towards Oklahoma here. And then on the south side of the Beatty proper, we have Rolling View Drive in that older subdivision, so you'll see what the street section and the lots look like there. And a snapshot on Georgetown Boulevard heading north. So you'll see at the very top of this, where the car is that 90-degree turn onto London Town there. Okay, so that, with that planned extension through there, the county would, of course, be looking for this same type roadway section to continue on as the Georgetown extension. Okay. So as I said, this is not in a technical review process. Once they are ready to come into that process, that will, just like any development plan, that will be seen by approximately 24 different review agencies for all the technical aspects of the code. Okay, so this is simply, like I said, informational, and they asked for some feedback here tonight from you all, from the community, to see what everybody has to say. Now, they have submitted a traffic impact study. That's not unusual that would come before a plan is officially submitted, and that is in the review process with county and state highway administration are reviewing the traffic impact study to see what that looks like. Okay. So I think that sums it up from a context perspective. And then if you have any questions right now, I'm happy to answer those. If not, we'll have the developer share their plan.
You okay with going forward with the developers?
Yep.
Yes, sir, good.
All right, very good. Gentlemen, why don't you proceed?
Great, thank you.
Oh, yeah, you would.
We don't, the room is mic'd, and so it's whatever the microphone, so I guess if you could speak more clearly into the mic would be helpful so they can hear in the back better. Yep, pretty much bring it up.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. Is that better? Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Control, I guess. Okay, well, again, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to be here this evening. As I mentioned, I'm Tom Pilon with St. John Properties. And we're going to share some slides here of just kind of give you an overview of the project. And obviously, happy to answer any questions, either as we go along or when we get to the end, whichever way you'd like to do that. So just a couple quick introductions. I've already introduced myself, and Matt's introduced himself. We have a couple members of our team with us as well. Andy Stein from Development Design Consultants. DDC is the project manager for the engineering firm, the local firm here you're probably familiar with. Kelly Schaefer and Clark Schaefer. Excuse me, Kelly's here this evening, Clark is not. Will be our land use attorney. And then Mark Keeley from Traffic Concepts is our traffic consultant. St. John Properties, just a little bit. And for some reason, this one portion of the slide is not showing up appropriately, but on the right-hand side there, what it's trying to show you is the states where St. John Properties currently is invested. So we actually don't remotely invest in properties. We place a person on the ground in whatever state that we might be invested in. So we're currently in 8 states listed there. And then company was started here in 1971 by Ed St. John. He's born and grew up in Baltimore and has remained here his whole life. We just celebrated our 50th anniversary last year, and Ed still arrives at the office every single day and is intimately involved in every one of these projects. In fact, he called me today to ask me questions about this particular project. We're one of the largest developers in the Mid-Atlantic. A couple of years ago, in 2018, we were selected as the National Developer of the Year by NAIOP, which is a commercial organization for property owners that own commercial and industrial properties. Something that we're very proud of, and quite honestly never expected a company of our size to be able to win an award of that prestige. We are the #1 LEED developer in Maryland. What that means, if you're familiar with LEED, it's basically the green building standard that the state and the others have adopted. We have 90 buildings certified as LEED buildings. Makes us the largest owner of LEED buildings in the state and number 5 in the country. So it's something that we've really put a focus on, and we're rather proud of that fact as well. Again, I mentioned we're locally owned, but a big thing is we are long-term owners. We are not fee developers. We don't do any third-party development for anyone. We only develop for ourselves. And as a result, we're long-term property owners as well. We're really a real estate investment company. So pretty much everything that Ed's ever developed, we still own. And that's important, and we make that point because when we enter a community, and just down the road from this property, we have Liberty Exchange, which we, about 2007, I think, give or take, we started that project. And we're still there and we still own it, and we'll be here for a long time. So once we've entered a community, we stay there. That's important to us because to us, we try to become part of the community. When we invest, we're just as interested in what's going on next to us as the current residents are and the current businesses are, what's coming next to them. So again, we'll remain in the community and we'll be good neighbors. Just quickly, we're soup to nuts as far as what we do. We start with acquisitions, whether it's a redevelopment site or maybe a value add opportunity, or a raw piece of land that's going to be developed from the ground up. And so we have an acquisitions group. I take care of our development group. We have a construction group where I mentioned before, we're not third-party developers. We are general contractors, but we do not do construction for anyone other than ourselves. We do the site work and the shell buildings, and then we actually have an interior construction group as well. We have in-house leasing that works with the local brokerage community. We have our own property management. We have our own maintenance division, our own in-house leasing and marketing groups. So we are literally soup to nuts. When you come to us, you deal with us. Again, just part of our business model. Several years ago, a number of years ago, I guess now, Ed St. John began the Edward St. John Foundation, which is, again, the idea of giving back to the community. Its principal mission is K through 12 education, but sometimes we do other things in addition to that. So things where you might see our name associated with events and things like that. The half marathon that's run at Maple Lawn down in Howard County every year, associated with the Greenbaum Cancer Institute at University of Maryland. The Polar Bear Plunge up at Aberdeen Proving Grounds. We have the Fallen Star Memorial, which commemorates Colonel Harold Green that was killed in action in Afghanistan, and also is a memorial to the families who are experienced the loss of someone in the military. So those are the kinds of things that we just try to do as part of the community. Now what we're here to talk about, this is, and Laura already touched on the picture to the left, is just gives you an idea of the location of the site, and then a little more zoomed in, and we'll get into a little more detail here. That's the overall concept for the site. And I'll get into that as we continue on through. I mentioned before that we are in due diligence, so we're still studying the site, trying to determine if we're actually going to purchase the property or not. Obviously, we're trying to make sure that at the end of the day, the project financially makes sense for us. So as a result of that, when we get into due diligence, we dive into it pretty hard. Not everybody probably looks at it as closely as we have a tendency to do, but we've been out in the field. Our surveyors have been there. Our environmental consultants, et cetera, have been crawling all over the property. We have field-run survey, field-run topography. We have field delineated wetlands, streams, buffers, all of those types of things. So we have a pretty good sense of the property, and we've already started looking at conceptually stormwater management and things like that. So I mentioned, actually I didn't mention this, but the site is actually currently 4 parcels of land. We intend to process this as 4 separate development plans. And quite honestly, it kind of works out really well because the northernmost section, as was mentioned, is really set up for 1 acre single family detached, and that's what we'll process that part of the site as. And then the middle, we have the retirement village, and then we have what we call the business district, and then we have residential to the south. This is our concept plan for the business district. It's about 33 acres, 7 we call flex R&D buildings. So they'd be multi-tenanted buildings. I'll show you a picture of what that looks like in a minute, and currently anticipate about 300,000 square feet of building when we're finished. You want to go to the next slide? Oh, I've got control. So this is just a couple pictures of what a flex building looks like. The picture on the right is a newly constructed building, and you can see, you know, we landscape and things like that, try to provide a front yard and things like that. Individual entrances to the various tenant spaces. It's not like where you walk in a building with a lobby and you've got a corridor and things. And then the photograph on the left just kind of shows you, that's a project down in Bowie that's probably it's about 15 years old, so you can start to see the landscaping mature and things like that. This is a project over in Middle River called Greenlee, also known as Baltimore Crossroads. To the north of this, as part of the development that we're developing, is a mixed-use development, but this is a portion of the property that we refer to as Area 5, and it's flex buildings. And the reason that we're showing you this is it shows the orientation of the buildings to the roads. And these next couple of slides, you'll see on there, there's 4 arrows. We're going to show you some photographs of those 4 arrows. This park started in about 2006, so it's about 15 years old. And you'll see, we just grabbed those, encouraged to see that the county did the same thing. We grabbed some images from Google Street View so that you can see as you come along the road there. This is the first picture there is the entrance into a parking lot, and you can see the landscaping and such. And then the next photograph to the right that's the entrance to a truck court. So we use screen walls and we use landscaping, and we try to have enough setback and things that we can get a nice little buffer in there. As you drive down the road, you're not looking at the back of an industrial building. And quite honestly, we don't really consider these industrial buildings, even though they fit well into the zone. The third picture there is another entrance into a parking area. And then the fourth picture is actually a combined entrance. On the right-hand side, there is a parking area for the front of the one building, and then in the background there behind the trees, that's actually the rear of a building that fronts on the other road. And so that's the loading area. So again, the point there is just that as you come through this community, you won't really be looking at truck courts as things mature. And then throughout all of our business parks, we always look for opportunities to give people an opportunity to not so much recreate inside the business park, but to have a place to go during the day. A lot of people tend to walk in our business parks, whether they work there or they're adjacent to the community and things like that. So we try to provide things like pavilions, areas to sit down. Sometimes they include picnic tables and things like that. And just give kind of little eyebrow or pocket parks throughout. And we do have some opportunities here to provide those types of amenities. So this is what we refer to as the residential North District. It's zoned R40, as was already mentioned. It's about 7.5 acres, which should yield 7 lots, 7 single-family detached. The houses, and I want to be clear about this, the way that shows, the house is actually front onto Bennett Road, but we thought it would be, it'd be important if we took the access back into the site and then had a shared driveway and come out at a single point on the Bennett Road, rather than have a series of driveways coming out onto the road. So that's what the intent would be there. And then this just gives you a flavor of, these are actually images of a builder that we're working with out at Greenlee. I already mentioned the mixed-use development out there. It gives you kind of the flavor of the type of units we would expect there. I mentioned earlier, quality is important to us, so we focus on, we don't tell people what your house has to look like, we just tell them what it's got to be made out of, basically. So we focus on the materials and the quality of the materials. And then we do focus on the details, how they detail the architecture itself. So these are the kinds of things that we've been successful in other places in implementing that kind of standard. This is the Retirement Village District. It's proposed for 149 units. These would be kind of villa or kind of one-story, I guess you could refer to them as townhomes, but they tend to be one-story or two-story. And they are, you can see how the proposed layout is there. And then in the center of it, we've got a community building with a pool. I'll show you a couple images there of that. On the left gives you just kind of a flavor of, again, the architecture or something, you know, the type of look and feel you might see as we get with builders. And then on the right-hand side, this is actually a photograph from a project down in Howard County. The community building would be anticipated to have a gym in it and probably like yoga room and something like that. Not a huge building, but then a swim facility as well with it. And that would be for the retirement village itself. And then to the south, the southern district, again, it's R20 zoned. 34 homes is what we've conceptually laid out there. The main entrance we anticipate will really be off of Georgetown Extended. It will connect into the existing community, but our feeling is this is probably the most logical way to get to these lots, and we'll market it from Georgetown. And then again, just gives you a flavor of the types of homes and architecture and again, the details of the buildings themselves as well as the quality of the materials. Laura already touched on the zoning, so I had a couple slides here that just kind of walk through the zoning history. If you've already seen it and you got it, then we'll just jump through these and I won't spend time on it. It just showed the evolution over the last few years. So. Okay, and then just a quick slide that shows you, where we are as far as density and such is concerned on the project. The industrial zone doesn't really have a density calculation associated with it, so we just computed floor area ratio. These buildings are one-story buildings, so typically we get about 10,000 square feet per acre. Gives a coverage of about 25% or 0.25 FAR. The R40 to the north, we're proposing 1 unit per acre, and it's allowed 1 unit per acre. The retirement village, those are allowed with the conditional use up to 3.5 units per acre. What we've laid out there is about 2.5 units per acre. And then the R20 to the south there, which would be a cluster development, by right would be about 2 units per acre, and we're at about 1.5 or 1.7 units per acre. And then just to talk a little bit about the access to the site, and we kind of broken this into three areas: the northern residential district and the retirement village district kind of function as a unit. I already mentioned that the single families to the north there won't access directly to Bennett Road. They'll have the shared driveway, and they'll come into what will be that road network there is anticipated to be private roads. So they'll access that and then out to Bennett Road, and the same thing running throughout the retirement village itself. We are proposing a couple of other connection points. Whether those will actually be just for emergency service entrances, or they'll be regular, people can come and go that way. Some of the feedback we've gotten is we don't want to see traffic move north to south to get to Bennett Road, especially from the industrial district. So that's a conversation we'll have with the county as we work through the process and perhaps get some feedback from you all as well. We're open to doing it either way. We think it would be adequately served from the north with the emergency accesses to the south, but we're open to that conversation. And then the business district, this will be a combination of public roads and private roads. Progress Way and Georgetown Boulevard will be public roads, and then the other roads that you see kind of circulating around the perimeter and up to the residential or the retirement village, those would be private roads. The access for the industrial will be strictly limited to Progress and Georgetown. There won't be any traffic allowed to go from this district up to Bennett Road from an industrial perspective, so certainly no through trucks, perhaps no through traffic at all. And then to the south, there's 3 places where it currently is set up to connect to the existing community. Long Meadow to the south, one at Long Meadow Drive, one at Rolling View, and it's slightly off the edge of this photograph here, but in the upper right-hand corner is Cedar Court. There's a connection point over there that was laid out on the record plats. So the intent would be to make those connections and then have the connection going out to Georgetown Boulevard, all public roads. And then Georgetown Boulevard itself, we were aware of the fact that this is a priority of the county. Clearly it shows on the master plan. I think it was further refined on the Freedom Community Plan, showing it running actually up the west side of the property up to Progress Drive, or Progress Way. Apologies, I have another project that's Progress Drive. Progress Way. But anyway, so in looking at the site, I mentioned we've been out and we've already done environmental, assessments on the site and everything else. We actually have already had MDE out to the site to look at this potential location for the stream crossing. We proposed 3 different potential locations with 6 different crossing types at each of those, so a box culvert, a bridge, et cetera. And we got some feedback from MDE that this would be the preferred location, least environmental impact, and it would be a box culvert, which was actually the county's preferred means of crossing as well. So that's where we would propose to do that. There's maybe some refinements as we go through this, but we've shared that with MDE, and they seem comfortable with it at this point. So our intent would be, the county's working on, there's a circle there to the left. That's the intersection, or the bend point, or however you want to call it, at London Town and Georgetown, as you're probably well familiar with. That circle is planned and is being designed by Public Works, and then the county also has a plan to extend Georgetown to hit the property, and then the balance of the road would run through the site and connect up with this alignment or something similar to that. And that's what we have, so happy to take any questions or go back and re-review stuff if you're interested.
Any questions?
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, no, look, we appreciate the presentation, and it does seem straightforward. It's an interesting property, and the way you've divided it into the separate developments is intriguing. The comments that we've gotten on other projects from the community have to do with traffic, obviously.
Sure.
And it looks like you've given that quite a bit of thought. Obviously, it's a work in process.
Sure.
The other thing has to do with impacts on schools and that sorts of thing, which is not necessarily, you're not building schools, but it has an impact on that, so that becomes part of the public dialogue. So,
Right, sure.
It's public water, public sewer, so that part of it is already established in this area. It's how do we make good use of it.
Yep.
Just a comment, the residential part of it is R40,000 that you have across the top, and I think it's R40,000 on the other side of the street
That's correct, yeah.
as well, so at least there
Yep.
seems to be, a nice buffer there, and facing Bennett Road.
Yeah,
As you're driving down the road, you're not looking at a lot of backyards.
right.
Which is not uncommon, but it seems to be
Sure.
nice that they're oriented toward the road.
Yeah, it just, it makes sense, right? Yeah,
It
they-
does, but then you don't have 7 different driveways coming out
Yeah,
onto Bennett
absolutely,
Road, which
yeah.
has an impact on traffic.
Yep.
Hey, is the vision of those facing Bennett Road and the access to, like an access lane behind those homes, those property owners would be responsible for that road? Would that be a private drive?
Yeah, it'll be a private drive, yes, right. That whole northern portion there, the retirement village and and those single-family detached, that would all be private infrastructure, roads anyway, water and sewer would be public, but
Right.
yeah, so, yeah.
Yeah. And then obviously the landscaping, as it turns out, I've seen some of your other projects certainly, and the landscaping always looks very nice, and certainly that's a part of your presentation here.
Yeah, that's important to us. We, at the end of the day, and Ed St. John always says, you spend more time at your office probably than you do at your house. So if walking in the front door, it's a nice walk, probably want to have the same thing as you walk into your office. So we do tend to focus on that, and we do find more and more, and it's, this product for us, the Flex product in particular, has really evolved over the years, and it's that you can literally go around Baltimore and I can show you like, well, that's first generation, and we're kind of at 5th or 6th generation maybe now. But that was one of the things that kind of came out of the evolution was the front yard kind of landscape. And then people want to walk in the park, so you make sure you provide the sidewalks and things like that. As I said, we get people walking in our parks as much that aren't part of the tenants and things like that. So anyway, just try to make it nice.
Have you, conceptually, when you talk about flex space, are you thinking this is 16, 18, 20-foot clear? What do you think the ceiling height is going to be on these buildings?
It's-
One of the plan that I have
Sure.
shows a 200-foot deep building in it and a fairly deep truck court shared and common. So I'm just curious if that sounds like a warehouse building.
That is a warehouse building.
Yeah.
Actually, we would consider that the term we use is FLOC. It's not a bulk building, it's not a flex building, it's in between. However, that plan, which was the one that we submitted, I don't know if you noticed on this one, we actually, I think we were showing two flex buildings.
Yep. It's substantially different, and there's parking, but more parking.
Yes, right.
I see it.
So that building, when we made that original submittal, we were talking to a company. Laura mentioned before, they probably don't even know what they're gonna put in these buildings. We don't. We build on spec. We're speculative builders. We've always been that way. What we do is we watch what's going on inside the park, and then we say, okay, we're at a certain point, we're gonna build the next building. But in this case, we actually had somebody approach us unsolicited that was looking to move from a different location, and they needed that building. So we said, well, let's lay it out. But literally, we were able to just replace one with the other. But our product, typically, we build flex buildings. So the minute that became obvious it wasn't going to happen, we just reverted back to what we do. So you asked about the clear height in the buildings, and that's a good question. Our typical buildings are 16-foot clear, but more recently, we've been building 18-foot clear. Under either scenario, you can't really do racking, which tends to limit the type of tenants that we have. The other thing that limits, meaning we don't get as much warehouse type and big distribution and things like that. And also, our buildings are only 100-foot deep. So if you need a really big space that's incredibly long and really inefficient, our tenants tend to be, and I'll tell you some statistics and you can take those for what they're worth, because then I could point to something completely different. But kind of our average size, if you just do the math on it, we're in that kind of 7,500 to 10,000 square foot. But we have tenants that take entire 40,000 square foot buildings, and they can be of various types. Like we have a company called, I don't know if they're still trading under this, I think they're L3 now, but it used to be Chesapeake Science. They came out of Annapolis, and they're down in Severna Park area, and they've got a whole building, but they're basically lab guys, right? They're not, so it depends. So that 18-foot clear tends to limit what goes in there, and we just don't get the warehousing product because we don't design for it. So yeah, it's a great question, though.
Can you go back to the entrance off of Bennett, which is going to house, I think, 156 homes overall?
You got it, right?
So the only exit is going to be onto Bennett?
So there's actually 3 access points. And again, this is open for, we're having these conversations with the county. That's the whole purpose of getting out in front of the county. This would be considered the principal entrance to the community, would be off of Bennett Road. But it's actually showing a connection point on Progress Way and a connection point that comes down, sorry, this is a little shaky for me, down to Georgetown. So again, whether those become for emergency access only, or they're actually, they're actually roads that connect that people drive on regularly. Again, it's trying to strike that balance of making sure that you've got adequate access, at least from an emergency services standpoint, and the concerns that we're hearing about people not wanting this to be a cut through to get to Bennett Road or from Bennett Road. And so we're just trying to strike that balance, and we'll figure that out as we go through the process.
So that will be a private road?
Those will be private roads nonetheless, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think my concern is that that's just a lot of traffic funneling it to Bennett.
Mhm.
It, because 156 times 2 could be quite a few cars.
Mm.
And that Janice, I think you're on something that we do need to focus on traffic, just in general in the area. But more, and I'll just, there was an idea floated by the county, and I don't know whether we have anyone here who could answer this question as to where this is in the ether that is our county. But there was talk about taking Progress Way and extending that across the Liberty athletic fields at one point, and minimizing the traffic that was coming out at Bennett at 32. And I'm concerned about Liberty High School and preserving those fields. And so I would just ask, is there, Linda, do we know, is that project, was that just a thought that was just kind of posted out? And this is ancient history.
and it was a state highway project. I'm not sure where it is right now. I mean, I think the trade-off was the improvements that were just done to Bennett
Right.
in lieu of that particular proposal.
I mean, it makes total sense that, okay, we did this instead of, right? Because that project's just been completed, it's a better intersection, right? But again, if we're forcing a bunch of traffic up Progress Way, does that elevate that in terms of what the state is thinking in terms of Progress Way and 32? Because when we talk about assets for that community, and again, just full disclosure, I live in that community, one of the assets that I'm most concerned about is Liberty High School. You know, that creates a sense of community for that area. And if we drove Progress Way across those practice fields to connect to Johnsville, I mean, that would be devastating to that high school. I mean, it doesn't kill the high school, but it certainly doesn't help it. And so again, I just want to voice that concern because again, traffic's the issue here, I think. One of the main issues. You know, where is it going to come out? Who's it going to impact? These neighborhoods to the south that have been cul-de-sacs since all those people have lived there, you know, since the beginning of time. We're now going to say that you know, okay, the primary collector is Georgetown Boulevard, and that's the #1 way to get in and out. But we know that if you live in this area and you're trying to get over to Walmart or any of those things over in that area, you're probably taking one of these secondary roads through those existing neighborhoods that have been quiet for so long. And so we're impacting a lot of people. I'm meandering, I'm sure.
Well, you had indicated one of the things that's ongoing is a traffic impact
Sure, yes.
study.
Yeah, we've already submitted that.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're gonna be
Yep.
interested in,
Yep.
I think the
direct
good thing
and
about,
cascading effects.
I'm sorry, please.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think one of the good things about this site is there's a lot of options for access, and that's why I kind of walked through it. You know, I mentioned before, we want to be a good neighbor. We try to be as good a neighbor as we can, because eventually, we're gonna have neighbors that we're gonna bring to town, to be honest. And I didn't mention this before, but, you know, when we develop a site, we don't typically do residential. We're really commercial developers, industrial developers, commercial developers. And so, but when we do have a project that's got residential in it, I always like to say, we're not residential developers, but I got 3,500 residential units in my pipeline right now. Because we've got 2 large mixed-use projects, one in Prince George's and one in Baltimore County. But we brought in partners that really do the residential stuff. And we put controls on the residential inside of our own business, our own communities, because we want to know long-term that the HOA does what it's supposed to do. And if it doesn't, we can step in and do that. So once we're there and we're on one side, and then there's this new residential community that's now abutting the existing residential community, we're going to be as interested in making sure that that's good as anybody else is going to be, maybe more so. But as far as the access and things like that, and your question about, or the concern about the access on the Bennett Road and things like that, again, obviously we're looking at the traffic and we're doing the traffic analysis, and that's subject to the state and the county. I guess really the county with the state having its input, and we'll go through those conversations. But the way that the property got zoned, the way that the way that it was set up from the Freedom Area Plan and then ultimately the zoning, sets the industrial where it does, and that idea of running residential or traffic through an industrial zone isn't altogether ideal. So that idea of kind of separating them makes a fair bit of sense. I will say that this plan is very much in keeping with what was anticipated by the Freedom Plan, meaning that it talked about the need for the 55+ housing and the other types of housing and things like that. So I think as you mentioned, it's kind of I think there's a nice blend of these things. So anyway.
So I think just to kind of set the stage, I think we view this as a conversation between us, you, and the community. And as I had voiced, we're appreciative of you coming in early and engaging in this conversation. And so sort of what my expectation is as we hear public comment is that this is a dialogue. This is, sometimes we have a plan that's brought in, it may be pretty far along. People are offering comments, and did you think about this, and did you think about that? This is a chance to engage in that dialogue at the beginning of the process. very, very early.
Sure.
And so I think collaborating and having that sort of a conversation is really good. So unless we have any other questions from up here, I think we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the general public comment. And I think we have asked people to sign up. The one thing that I will say that I will exercise my prerogative as chair is we do limit the comments to 3 minutes, and I'm gonna hold you to that, just out of fairness. I wanna make sure everybody has the same opportunity. If you don't need all 3 minutes, you don't have to take all 3 minutes. But I'm gonna cut you off at 3, because we wanna make sure everybody has a chance to speak, and we don't wanna run this into the evening and turn it into an endurance competition. So with that, we'll open it up and we'll walk through the speakers, Madam Secretary.
Absolutely. So we have about 15 speakers for this evening. I'm going to call your name. When I call your name, if you'd like to speak and utilize your time, please step up to the microphone and give us your comments. So with that, I'd like to call Mike Bloom. Mike Bloom, come. You don't. You're not going to speak? Okay. Ray, and it looks like Cole. Okay. Brooks Leahy.
Thank you. Good evening. For the record, Jay Brooks Leahy, Delaney Leahy, Curtis and Brophy. I represent the Beatty family that owns the property. They're 4 siblings, and they're each 25% owners. And we've been dealing with St. John's and very pleased with dealing with them the way they operate. I wanted to briefly discuss some history concerning the Freedom Mini Plan rezoning. The board may know this, but I think it's worth talking about. The property was originally recommended for high-density residential, and that was a decision of the Planning Commission. I think it was a decision that was rational, but it was a decision that had a lot of opposition to it. A lot of the community, I'm sure many of the folks here as well, were unhappy with that, and so when it got to the commissioner level, the commissioners rejected that. So after that, there was zoning by request. And this property requested to have R20 zoning as well as some C2. And that also became somewhat controversial. So now, the rezoning that St. John's came forward with is resulting in a plan that I think is a lot more acceptable to the community. I know I wasn't there, but I understand that St. John's had a sort of a presentation with the help of Commissioner Rothstein to the community and went over these plans. I think the feedback was generally favorable. Certainly, any way you look at this plan compared to what could have happened, it's a lot less traffic, it's a lot less impact on Bennett Road, where you've got R40 against Bennett Road as opposed to R20. And as St. John's has said, there's a lot of flexibility here with the existing road network to come up with a plan that can satisfy folks. And it's very early in the development process, but I think St. John's, in their due diligence, really spends a lot of time looking it over and coming up with concepts and ideas that can be a win-win. So we believe this is a good plan. It's in conformance with the objectives of the Freedom Community Comprehensive Plan and the zoning, and it's going to provide a good development for the benefit of the county, good economic development. So it's our hope the commission will, and I know this is going to go on in the future, but will look favorably towards this plan. And I finished with 27 seconds to go. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you, Councilor.
All right, thank you. Next, Phaedra Nally. Phaedra, sorry, I apologize. Phaedra.
Good evening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Phaedra Nally, and I'm a 10-year resident of the Freedom District living just off of Bennett Road. I don't normally get involved in local issues, but I'm finding that if we don't start getting involved, we don't have any say in the future of our community. In regards to the Beatty Farm, I've followed much of the discussions over the past few years, and I've reviewed the current proposal for land use. My understanding, just to reiterate, 7 single-family homes, 149 age-restricted townhomes, and approximately, we'll say, 300,000 square feet of warehouse space or business space. I'm not here to argue zoning or law. but I am here to hold you accountable to the Freedom Community Comprehensive Plan from 2018. You stated, any increases in land use densities will be generally limited in order to mitigate the impact on traffic and existing infrastructure. You're proposing high-density housing in an area that already has limited traffic outlets and crowded schools. You stated, recognizing that many citizens came to the Freedom area to escape the trappings of urbanization in surrounding counties, the government will not attempt to fundamentally transform communities against the will of existing homeowners and residents. Recognizing that Freedom is a suburban rural area, government will respect the character of the community and its neighborhoods. Your proposal has frustrated many residents who have moved to this area specifically for the planned recommendations I've just stated. As is, this land use proposal transforms the character of the Bennett Road communities. You stated, increase the amount of land designated for commercial and light industrial uses in the areas targeted for economic development. While Freedom is designated an economic development area, it already has a high number of both commercial and industrial vacancies, and additional development will only increase light and noise pollution in residential areas. Not to mention, some of the buildings shown completely lack character, which is commonplace for our part of the county. You stated, address the visual appearance and lack of sense of place in Freedom's commercial corridors. Adding more warehouse space in the center of a residential district does nothing to beautify or unite the community. You stated, conserve sensitive area lands through existing policies and programs and minimize the impact of a development upon sensitive areas. Your proposal includes box culverts over Snowden Creek, an area laden with natural wildlife who are slowly losing their land, and that impact goes over 4 seasons, not for a single study. As many others have stated, economic development is good for community growth, but cramming development into any plot of land that doesn't add to the character of a community is reckless and without foresight. I encourage you to reconsider the land use for the Beatty Farm.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker, Stephen DeBrockney.
Yes, my name is Stephen F. DeBressany. I live off of Bennett Road, not too distant from the Beatty property. And I certainly share the sensitivities the previous speaker had elaborated upon at some length just previously. However, I will also point out that the proposal or the concept as presented tonight is not so objectionable as other proposals that have been floated over the past few years during the course of the Freedom District plan redevelopment, which was extraordinarily controversial for a number of irregularities and lack of opportunity for community input. However, looking at this concept, I believe there is an opportunity to work in conjunction with the developer, perhaps to mitigate some of these concerns that have been raised today. Assuming, of course, that the ultimate site plan does not deviate significantly from what's been presented tonight. Also, we do have to consider what sorts of tenants would be eventually to occupy these commercial or industrial buildings, hopefully not to include those that would bring, let's say, objectionable noise or other sorts of pollution or other kinds of undesirable impacts upon the residential neighbors that surround this property. And I've finished within 50% of the allotted time.
Well done. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, Jeff Sturgis.
Good evening. Jeff Sturgis, 5969 Shelby Court. I have property that touches the east portion of this proposal. And what I heard earlier is this was one of the largest properties left. Why'd we have to take it? I don't know what's wrong with conservation. We talked about there's already been an environmental impact done. What's happened in this area, and over the course of a few years, is we lost the fight, and we have the assisted living facility that was in the area. We've now lost the fight against this, and we have commercial, residential, relatively high-density housing here, a good bit of it. You know, one of the largest pieces of vacant property that was left, taken. We have on the table the Hobie property, planned to be taken. This is all the open space around. This is all conservation area. It's home to a herd of at least 30 deer. I see them in my backyard daily. It's home to a family of fox. It's home to owls. It's home to hawks. It's home to a lot of animals. And, you know, when we look at this singularly, it doesn't look bad. But when we put everything together and look at all of these projects, including the potential extension of Monroe, where you're going to take the very last piece of conservation area, when we look at all this together, we've taken away all the conservation. I was looking at the map in the back. Sure, there's a little bit of green area there surrounding the stream. The map's a little bit deceiving. It is a very small amount of property that we're leaving. As far as the impact study, I'm not sure what's involved in that. I don't know what Maryland MDE came out and did. But my 7-year-old spends a lot of time near that stream, and he has discovered what we think is a relative of the extinct or near extinct Maryland darter. Anyone look at the stream? What kind of assessment are we doing? I beg both the developers and the county to look at the bigger picture and think about the environment, conservation, the animals also that call this home. My neighbors here, I'm sure, will talk about their other concerns related to traffic, schools, fire and EMS, as well as conservation. I'm going to leave that to them. I have the same concerns, but my real concern is the stream area, open space, and continuing to take every last piece around. I'm a nature photographer. This gets really close to my heart. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Denton Gosnell.
Hello.
Good evening.
I'm a longtime resident of Eldersburg. I've lived there my whole life. The property where you want to put the circle and cut through the Beatty property is going through my property. I have not been, no one has came down and talked to us about this. Now, my mother has passed away. My sister and I inherited with my aunt. But there's a lot of concerns about, there's traffic problems there. And it's the noise, the lights, and the environmental thing, like the other gentleman had said. How about the water the runoff that goes from there to Liberty Reservoir, turns around and is being filtered, and then pumped back up, and you're gonna give it to these people as drinking water, but you can't have it polluted, so you should be having more boundaries for environmental safety. Plus, I have some pictures I'd like to show of the backyard of my son's property. Now, you're gonna take it and run a road through there. You don't care, because it's money in your pocket. That's all you're worried about. You don't care what it does. You're all about money. I understand that. And I really don't object to what they're doing, it's how they're doing it. The road, like the other gentleman here had mentioned, that road needs to be reevaluated. And I believe on one of your slides from the county, it showed the road in a different direction, not the direction that it's on the plan that I see here now. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next speaker, Karen McFarland.
With a question mark, because I don't really know exactly what I'm going to say, but that's my cousin, this is my mother, and so I don't live in Eldersburg anymore, but I grew up there for many years. I lived there. That was my grandparents' property in the back there where things are going to be affected, and I can tell you many years ago as a little child playing in my grandparents' at my grandparents' house. When London Town Boulevard came through, when London Town was built, we had a spring at my grandparents by their barn, and it was supposed to have not been impacted, and believe me, it was. It was significantly demolished. And at that point, I'm sure, of course, I was a kid, I'm sure that there were studies done and things like that, that were, people looked at it, but it didn't seem to make a difference because it ruined the stream. It ruined the spring that we had. So I don't understand all the boundaries and all this kind of stuff, but I do know that, you know, a lot of times things might look okay on paper, but when it's all said and done, it doesn't turn out that way. And I agree with that gentleman that was talking about, you know, the creatures that are gonna be affected. I mean, there's so many things, but that's what made me decide, I think I'm gonna say something, because I remember as a child playing in the woods, having fun, and then how, after they changed it, how much different things were.
Thank you. The next speaker, Joyce Klein.
Well, I've been there just about my whole life too, and that's longer than theirs. It does have a very sentimental value to us, and to think that there's going to be a road taken through that property there in the bottom, and it's very heartbreaking. Plus also that one, yes, the one gentleman talked about the animals. I can't understand why. I mean, this is the one, Mr. Beatty, I knew Mr. Beatty, and I don't think he would want our Eldersburg area to be impacted like this. I mean, I can understand building some houses and this, that, and the other, but why does it have to be so impacted so much? And yes, this is, someone said that this was the only area, only property in this area that is, you know, not multiplied and commercialized, shall we say. So what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? I mean, like I said, I've lived here in Carroll County my whole life, and my goodness, it's not like, it's not the country that it used to be. It's just absolutely and positively heartbreaking. And yes, especially, you know, if you want to get the idea that they're going to put a road and this is something that I talked to my nephew Denny about quite a bit. It's our property. How can someone, the county or whoever, come in and just take it over? You know, that doesn't make sense at all. That doesn't make sense at all to me. I just, but I'm from the old country, the old world, and I don't understand. I especially don't understand that. We don't want that property destroyed. And I think what they're going to do with Mr. Beatty's, and I think Mr. Beatty's name has 2 T's in it, not 1. I might be wrong, but anyway. Oh gosh, what was I going to say? I can understand wanting to develop a little bit, you know, but why to this extent, this big, you know? Keep our county what it's always been, more rural. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next speaker, Phil Martin.
That's my little boy.
All right, so on the same property situation. Okay, when they built London Town Boulevard, they put London Foggy in actually, and all that property. And their spring heads over there, they closed off. And they run the water across under Georgetown Boulevard onto our grandparents' property. So when we were kids, there was this trickling stream. Now there's a ditch that you can stand in and get lost in. That was never there. So water runs across there all the time. That whole field is opened up from that all the way down to there where it used to be trickling. Now it's that. And then on the other side, like my sister said, there's another spring. There's a spring out of this end that filters into that. Their water comes across and cut it out about as deep as I am and about as wide. Goes all the way down and turns the corner. There's another spring head down there. When you guys came and put the water and sewage down through Walnut Avenue, that's when you messed up that spring head. And this road is gonna go over top of that spring head in order for you to get it in there. And all Beatty's property down through there is wetlands, all beats. So I don't know how you're gonna run across all that to put this road in. Doesn't make any sense. And I'm talking, that's a serious impact. Of course, the county and everybody can always do whatever they wanna do, but it affects us and our property. And it's just not right. It's facts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Barb Nolan.
That's me, and believe me, it's a lot easier for me to sit here than to get up and stand over there. I'll talk loud. I just have a couple comments. One, I'd like to know why, when the surveyors did their survey, why did they give us the stream? That stream's not on my plat, it's not on any of my deeds. But yet, I've got the stream, my neighbor Phil has the stream, and we don't own the stream, that's part of it. The other part, I can't believe we have enough water supply and the sewage plant. I mean, that's a big concern. When the sheep farm sold 1.5 million, I was told then that we were in a red water zone. I can't believe, well, I know why Todd's doing it, but I just can't believe that everybody in the development is gonna stand for this. I don't understand. I mean, it was bad enough when the sheep farm sold, and I called and I said, how did it sell when we were in a red water zone? The reply to me was, well, that's the old commissioners, we have new ones now. So I don't know if I can say too many good things about the new commissioners. You know, if I have to, I'll get all the neighbors together. I know we can't protest, we'll be arrested, we lay down in front of the equipment. I don't want my home, you know, anybody that comes to my house would go out on my back deck and everybody says the same thing. It's like you're in a retreat. It is so pretty and calming and peaceful. And where's the runoff going? Because my property slants downhill, just like Todd's does, to the stream. That stream feeds Liberty Reservoir, okay, our drinking water. Where's the runoff going from all the new blacktop and the homes and everything else into the stream? I don't know, I think it's disgusting. I don't have anything else to say.
Okay,
It's
thank you.
disgusting.
All right, the next speaker, Diane Robinson. Okay. Then Philip Lindmeyer.
Oh, he left. He had
Okay.
a procedure done this morning and he was getting tired.
Okay, thank you.
Well, he's my neighbor and I know he feels the same way I do. And we still want to know why Beatty gave us the stream. Because it would mess up his plans, is that it? Because of the runoff?
Okay, the next speaker, I apologize, I'm having a hard time with your name, but it looks like W. Grant.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay.
Excuse me. I only have one real comment, and that is, I live on Rolling View Drive. The county's going to have to create 2 new roads that are on the map as proposed. One is Long Meadow, and the other one is Sunshine, or whatever it is. My comments are this: I would like to ask several questions. Several years ago, we were told that the lower part of the Beatty property had some rare type of life. I don't know what kind of animal or fish or whatever. And it could not be built on. Well, that stream runs the whole length of the Beatty property.
What are they gonna do with that? The second question is, where are you gonna get the water? Carroll County doesn't own the water rights to Liberty Lake. And we were told that there was a limit on the water. So where are you gonna get your water? And the same way goes with the sewage. Where are you putting your sewage plant? We were told county had to put that up. So now the county's gonna get stuck with sewage, with water, and now you've got conservation, which you probably forgot about. And that's it. I'm done.
All right, thank you.
All right, and then the last speaker for the evening is Mark Krebs.
Good evening. Mark Krebs, live off of Bennett Road. I share many of the sentiments that the other speakers have made. And I think traffic, for me, is number one. And, you know, I share Janice Kirtner's comments about the 156 retirement homes, and that, you know, times two, you could have that many people coming out there on the Bennett Road. And the preliminary plans I heard about of having the single-family homes fronting Bennett Road, that's great. I think that's a good thing. But I thought that would also took into account the traffic. But with having 156 retirement villas coming out on Bennett Road being their main access, well, that kind of wipes out the what we thought was a good traffic outcome for this. And so I think that the traffic is, as everybody said, traffic is the big issue here. You know, the county, for as long as I've been here, which is 37, 38 years, hasn't done a good job of upgrading county roads, whether it's Oklahoma, Bennett, obviously the folks that live on Long Meadow and Rolling View, where it's essentially, for all intents and purposes, a single lane road, so that if they have traffic going through there, that's gonna really impact their communities. The other thing that some others have touched on is the open space concept. It's, you know, you do think about Eldersburg as, okay, let's just keep building and cramming and jamming, and you know, we don't seem to have any plans for open space or parks, et cetera. And I think that's something that the Planning Commission should really look into. And we've got this huge, big piece of property here. Certainly there should be a spot to have some open space and to have a park or something along that way. The other thing that I just remembered, it seems to me that there's a burial ground on this property somewhere. I don't know whether that's been taken into account. I don't even know exactly where it is, but certainly, you know, that should be something that should be looked into. But I hope, once again, you know, once again, to go back to the traffic, that's, to me, is number one, and something we need to do with. Now, having lived there, you know, the existing warehouses, to me, have been, you know, they're below grade off of Bennett. You know, frankly, they've been a good neighbor. You know, I have no complaints about that. So if the warehouse is gonna somehow be kind of the quiet, essentially a quiet neighbor that you don't see too much of, that, you know, wouldn't be a bad thing if something's gotta go there, if it's gonna be like what we have now. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes everyone who's signed up to speak this evening.
All right, very good. Thank you, Madam Secretary. And thank you all for participating tonight. Stay part of the dialogue would be my suggestion, because it is an ongoing conversation. And the conversation can impact what happens and how it happens. With that, we'll move to item 8, which is adjournment. Do I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you all very much. Thank you.